Hi, my name is Ayeshe, and this is part 3 of undoing spiritual abuse and tone policing of survivors of abuse and how to create healthy communities. So, a very common, we've talked about what spiritual abuse is. We've talked about why, victims of abuse who speak out about sexual or spiritual abuse or abandonment or patriarchal inequality, gender inequality in spiritual traditions are silenced, vilified, and how that's done, the strategies for doing that. And now we're talking about the impact of a disbelief in community and how asking victims of abuse to frame sharing their abuse in a way you find palatable under the guise of right speech, ethical speech, nonviolent speech from a trauma-informed psychology-based perspective, the impact that has on victims. Because what often happens when you're a victim of spiritual abuse, like you're a Buddhist nun who's been ordained, your labor has been used, you're exhausted, you have no more money, you've been serving these monasteries for years and you end up homeless, you end up, getting illness, you end up bankrupt, you end up seeing your friend sexually abused. And then you're like, how could this happen? And why are there no female leaders? And why do we have no full ordination? And all of these issues, right? So of course, yes, things are changing, but none of this addresses like one nunnery that exists or one inspiring teacher like Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo doesn't mean that all this abuse and inequality isn't happening. So why, when you speak about this, you'll often find one, disbelief, two, people trying to disparage your character. But then you'll find people that are like in shock and want you to rephrase what you're saying in a really gentle way because they feel Buddhist nuns shouldn't be, or women in general shouldn't be assertive or direct. And instead of addressing the abuse, they'll come after you for the way that you're reporting this information, right? Like recently I got trolled a huge amount for just saying His Holiness Dalai Lama is a wonderful teacher. He's done a lot for Tibetan nuns and the Tibetan people, but he has $150 million. And if he wanted to support the Western monastics he ordains, who have an 85% disrobing rate and very few monasteries to stay in where they're fully supported, could support them if he wanted to. He chooses not to. And that is considered outrageous or, blasphemous or somehow harming the Dharma when it's just a fact, So why is it problematic to ask people to, frame it in a more gentle, better way? So 99% of women who report sexual abuse to police or court or even cult abuse get no conviction in court. That means that there is practically no justice for survivor of sexual abuse, and abusers are protected by religion and violently trolled and suppressed. We know that in the Catholic Church, sexually abusive priests were moved from one precinct to another so that they didn't have to face accountability. Tone policing further silences victims in groups where their abuse and what they have endured should be heard and validated. We know that it took 17 women or more to bring down, what was that guy, Harvey Weinstein. We know that Epstein abused so many women before the truth came out. And the truth only comes out years later when the women grow up and their brain is fully developed and they realize what has happened to them. So psychologically, tone policing survivors of abuse is harmful and should be avoided for several key reasons, primarily because it invalidates their experience, suppresses healthy emotional processing, and can perpetuate the cycle of abuse dynamics. 1, invalidation of experience. Dismissing trauma. Tone policing, meaning, can you say that in a less aggressive way? I object to your tone. I object to the way you're saying that. Shifts the focus from the abuse to the survivor, from the abuse the survivor endured to the way they are expressing their pain. This effectively minimizes or dismisses the severity of their trauma and suggests their feelings are unwanted or excessive. And this happens all the time, often by women against women, often by people who are unaware of their internalized patriarchy or how they're trying to protect their own feelings rather than listening to the pain of the abuse survivor and accepting the ugliness of what is going on underneath the guise of leadership. Silencing the victim by criticizing a survivor's emotional expression, i.e., anger, crying, raising their voice. The implicit message is that their story is only acceptable if delivered in a calm, socially palatable manner. This demand for politeness in the face of profound pain is a form of control that can re-traumatize the individual. Suppression or emotional processing. So tone policing interferes with healing, expressing emotions, even messy ones like anger and distress, which can actually help victims reclaim their autonomy and power. Is a vital part of processing trauma and healing. Tone policing interrupts this natural grieving and recovery process, forcing emotions inward where they can manifest in unhealthy ways such as depression or anxiety. So tone policing or, expecting the person to say it in a palatable, non-violent way. Tone policing is often a tactic used by abusers to maintain power and control others. When others, friends, families, and professionals use the same tactic, it can make the survivor feel unsafe and reinforce the abusive dynamics they are trying to escape, hindering their ability to trust and seek support. It perpetuates harmful dynamics. There is a thing called respectability politics, which demands a certain tone from survivors, often stemming from respectability, which prioritizes the comfort of the listener over the needs of the person who experienced harm. I mean, is it more important that the truth of the Dalai Lama having $150 million is acknowledged? Is it more important to acknowledge that Western monastics have very few places to live and are homeless? Is it more offensive to be angry that I said the Dalai Lama has enough money to support Western monastics if he wants to? Or isn't it more offensive that he doesn't support the monastics he ordains according to the 2,600-year-old tradition of supporting the Sangha to thrive and hold the Dharma? Isn't it more offensive that Western Buddhist nuns are working for Dharma centers for no money, watching their friends get raped, working, being denied leadership positions, being denied full ordination, being denied training, being denied acknowledgement of their labor, that their labor supports this patriarchal system where men sit on thrones and women clean toilets? Is it more offensive that abuse is not being acknowledged? Or is it more offensive to say, why is it more offensive to say this abuse is happening? Why do we attack the messenger rather than the abuse that's going on? Why do we attack women who speak out instead of addressing the patriarchal inequality? This places an unfair burden on survivors to manage other people's emotional reactions to their trauma. It discourages future disclosures. Like when people like me who speak up are attacked, other people don't come forward. I actually am expected to be a scapegoat for so many women. I have so many women in large Tibetan Buddhist organizations, nuns, coming forward and telling me, what's happened to them. Like my Dharma, the place that was designated as a nunnery is now being turned into a retreat center, or I work as a translator for no money and I have to have a job outside, or I have to work in Starbucks because my Dharma center has decided they'd rather give the Lama a new car than support the Western monastics who run the teaching program. They're met with judgment, and they know that if they're disclosing future abuse or seek help from others, their feelings will be met with judgment rather than understanding, compassion, and support. And rather than, creating agreements with teachers that say you cannot, sleep with your students, or if you have a relationship, you need to tell the community and that person is no longer your student, that there needs to be a process whereby women have equal access, nuns have equal access to resources, the same as the Tibetan Lama in the center, that women hold positions on the committee, that there are pro-gender equality, pro-gender diverse inclusivity in the policies regarding Western teachers, that Western monastics are given the same support as Tibetan teachers, that there is female leadership in your lineage. And instead of focusing on how a survivor is speaking, the focus should be on what they are saying and ensuring they feel heard, validated, and supported, and that action is taken to protect those survivors of abuse, and that abuse survivors are believed, and that external, entities investigate claims of abuse, that survivors are given justice, and that if abuse is found to have happened, that appropriate actions are taken so that the abuse doesn't continue or that the inequality doesn't continue. Thank you.